This is a safety video about the radial arm saw and the miter saw. These saws are both similar in the fact that they're used for doing crosscuts. In our shop, the radial arm saw is used only for 90-degree crosscuts, while the miter saw is used to do different angled cuts. While operating each of these machines, it's important that you have all of your personal protective equipment in place, such as your safety glasses and your hearing protection. It's important that you don't have any loose or baggy clothing and that you remove any jewelry that's hanging down and that you pull back long hair. In order to safely operate this machine, you need to be aware of the different parts that are on this saw. On the top of the saw is the arm that extends out towards the end of the arm is the on-off switch. On the right lower side of the machine here is the handle that you hold, and on the left is the blade with the guard. The radial arm saw gets its name from this arm that comes out and the capability of the blade to spin and to do different angled cuts. However, since we have a miter saw in our shop, we don't need to use that function. When using this saw, as you pull it out the arm, it has a couple bearings that allow it to slide out that arm. In the back, there's a cable attached to it that has a weight at the bottom of it. So when you're finished with your cut, it helps it to pull back to the start position when you finish cutting. When setting your stock up on this machine for cutting, it's important that you make sure that it's sitting flat against the table and tightly against the fence. If not, you run the risk of pinching the blade and having the saw kick back at you. When you make your cut, it's important that you grip the handle firmly and hold your arm in a stiff position so that that saw doesn't kick back at you. You also want to make sure that your feet are in a comfortable position about shoulder width apart off to one side of the machine when you make that cut. When you're making a cut with this machine, it's important that you have the blade spinning to full speed before you pull it into the material. You want to grab the handle firmly and make sure your arm is in a slightly stiff position so that that blade doesn't catch that material and kick back toward you. The blade is spinning down and away from the material, so as you're pulling it out, it wants to grab the material and pull back toward you, so your arm keeps that from happening. When cutting stock on this machine, it's important that you have a good grip on that stock. Your offhand, the one that's not holding the handle, is there to hold that stock down to the table and firmly against the fence. If you're cutting long stock and extends out to the right of the machine, you need to get somebody to help you because that stock will fall down after you make that cut. When I pull the blade through the material, I want to go at a slow and steady pace. I don't want to pull too fast. I want a firm grip on it so as I start to pull it through the material, once I clear the material, then I can let it back and push back slightly and let the saw come back to the start position. I want to make sure that I keep my hands at least 6 inches away from the blade at all times, and this red zone is here to help you remember to do that. Once I shut the saw off, I want to stand here and wait until the blade comes to a complete stop before leaving the saw. I will now do a demonstration cut with this machine. Before doing that, I want to make sure that I have my safety glasses in place and my hearing protection on. The miter saw is similar to the radial arm saw in several aspects. On the top of this saw is the handle, which has the trigger, which you can use right or left-handed. It has 2 bars on the back that allow it to slide forward and backwards. On each side of this machine, there are 2 clamps that allow you to lock your material down into place. On the bottom of this saw, there's a groove right here that allows the blade to slide back and forth through that. And on the front of that arm, there's a lever that you can lock and unlock so you can swing the arm around for angled cuts. When making a cut with the miter saw, you need to make sure that your material is down flat against the table and firmly into the fence on the machine. Not all miter saws have these clamps on them, so after you clamp your material down into place, it's also a good habit to get into to put your hand on there as well to add some pressure to that, making sure to keep it 6 inches away from the blade. When you make a cut with the miter saw, you still want to use some of the same techniques as a radial arm saw. You want to make sure that you have good footing, you're off to the side of the machine, that your arm is stiff and in place, and that you have a good firm grip on the machine. The difference is that when this cuts from front to back. So you pull the saw out towards the front of the material, you lower it down with the blade spinning full speed all the way down, and then you push it forward. You wait till the blade comes to a complete stop before you lift that up out of the way. As previously mentioned, your fingers and hands should be at least 6 inches away from this machine. On this machine, there's a round wheel here that allows for the machine to spin to do different angles. It's approximately 6 inches from the blade to the edge of that circle. So now I'm going to do a demonstration on how to make a square cut on this machine. To do that, I'm going to set my board up here, make sure that I'm going to be able to take a little bit of that material off. I'm going to set this clamp down into place and lock it tightly into position. I'm going to make sure my safety glasses are on and my hearing protection is in place, and I'm going to make a square cut. When making angle cuts with this machine, it's a little bit more difficult to keep your hand 6 inches away because that blade is either spinning towards you or away from you. So it's really important to keep in mind where your hand is at when making an angle cut. So I'm going to turn this saw and make about a 15-degree cut on this machine. And out, you can see out towards the end of this that the blade is closer to my hand if my hand is in this place. So I have to set my hand a little bit out of the way when making this cut. And I want to make sure that all scraps are out of the way before making a cut. Set it to 15 degrees, lock it into place, set my hearing protection back on, and make the cut.
There are 10 key things to remember from this video. First, wear eye protection. Second, wear ear protection. Third, do not wear loose clothing and pull back long hair. Fourth, keep stock flat to the table and tight to the fence. Fifth, grip handle firmly and have a stiff arm. Sixth, stand off to one side. Seventh, make sure the blade is spinning at full speed before cutting. Eighth, ask for help to support long stock. Ninth, keep hands 6 inches away at all times. And finally, make sure the blade stops completely before moving scraps.